Hello, guys and gals, and welcome to another episode of Skills and Abilities. I'm on the other side this time because I, yeah, made that mistake already. I made it before, but then I restarted up the series, and I was like, you know what? Let's get some skills and abilities done, and then I totally forgot that I need to be on the other side for skills and abilities. So I recently just finished my solo self-found run on Kubus, GGM underscore Kubus, the monster dog, and he really is a monster dog because he can turn into a werewolf, and he's pretty good at it. So I have already covered werewolf, lycanthropy, feral rage, and rabies. So today I've actually already covered fire claws as well. Did that a while back, way before these. I don't think I ever did hunger, which there's really not a lot to say about that skill. But today we're going to be looking at Fury, which is an interesting ability that has some serious downsides as well as being a very amazing ability just in general. Fury has probably a lot in common, like with Zeal, for instance. Zeal is a 5-hit ability as well, and Fury is also a 5-hit ability. I can't remember or not, though, if somebody can put down in the comments, because I don't remember. Was Fury always capped at 5? I remember Zeal was not always capped at 5. It used to go up to like freaking 30 hits, some crazy number. It was actually pretty insane. And they eventually capped it at 5, but I'm wondering if they did the same thing to Fury, because I don't remember if Fury didn't have a cap, so feel free to let me know. Fury is a simple ability, but it is not exactly like Zeal. There are some other interesting things that go on with Fury that make it inferior to Zeal, actually. Zeal becomes the better of the two skills if you're comparing them directly. Now, why is that? Well, first off, Zeal can be interrupted where... Sorry, Fury can be interrupted where Zeal cannot. So this is actually a very specific thing about Fury, is that when you're in the middle of an attack, you can actually be interrupted while using Zeal. And if I bring my character over here and show you the kind of like the way this ability works, is it hits all the targets around you in a circle. Now, there's good and bad to this, and the good is that yes, it does hit 5 times. The bad is that it hits whatever it wants to 5 times. So if you only have one monster, and this is great, because if you only have one monster, you can attack that one monster 5 times in quick, succession. And that one monster will get a lot of damage to them. However, if you're surrounded by monsters like this, and you use Fury, it's going to attack everything around you in the circle. And it's going to spread that damage out pretty good to everything nearby, which is going to make it kill a lot slower. Another big downside of Fury is that for some reason or another, it doesn't have the standard ability of using the attack even after you've run out of mana. So with most abilities, like for instance with Feral Rage, if I were to completely run out of mana, in fact, let me just go ahead and spam this until I run out of mana. If I run out of mana with Feral Rage, eventually I will start regular attacking, which means that I can still continue to keep attacking even after I run out of mana. However, with Fury, when you run out of mana, it simply says, I can't do that. I can't do that. I can't do that. I'm out of mana. I can't do that. This makes for a very odd situation where sometimes you're in the middle of a fight, like this one, and you start getting not enough mana notifications because you can't keep attacking because you're out of mana. Which is very detrimental to a character who has a lot of lifesteal and is relying on that lifesteal to keep him alive. Now, let me see if I can explain why this is such a bad thing in terms of like how the ability works. So let's say you're in the middle of a fight, I don't know, with Uber Bale. Let's say Uber Bale and Tristram. Uber Bale uses an attack that reduces all your mana to 0. All right, he has that. It's a very special ability. He shoots it out in front of him like a bad breath of types, and when it hits you, it sucks all your mana away, and it's gone. All right. Now, most melee characters have some form of mana steal or life steal in some form on their character. This helps them to restore their mana when their mana is lost, and they can rebuild it back up pretty much from zero, depending on how how many monsters are nearby and whether they can life leech or not. Of course, if there's skeletons, things get a little bit tricky. But in general, if you run out of mana, you can always leech the life back. You can always leech the mana back. You know what I mean? And when Fury runs out of mana, unfortunately, what happens is it just doesn't work anymore. And this can sometimes literally kill you. And as I leveled up Kubus in my solo self-found Players 8 run, I often found myself in a situation where Fury was getting me into trouble, where I would run out of mana with Fury, and then when I ran out of mana with Fury, whether it was mana burn or, like specific monsters that were causing the problem, like, gloams and ghosts and things like that drain your mana. There's 100 different reasons why potentially you could have your mana hit zero, and the moral of the story is that if you're using Fury as your main ability and you don't have anything else set up. Like if I were to say have Fury on my main ability, and then maybe I had something else like the bear on my right click, and I didn't actually have another ability like programmed in so that I could attack with. If I'm in one of those situations where I run out of mana, Fury then basically will not attack again. So you're just standing there like an idiot in the middle of a bunch of monsters not doing anything. And it's very detrimental to the character. What I ended up having to do was I had to put my Feral Rage on my main click and my Fury on my right click, specifically because if I didn't do that, whenever I got into a situation where my mana would get completely stolen away, I would have no way to continue attacking. I would have no way to restore my mana through mana leech or any other form, and I would essentially just die because this character is so dependent on his lifesteal to stay alive in most situations that when you stop attacking, even if only for a brief couple of seconds, even if only for like 3 seconds or 5 seconds, it's literally death. Like it's a death sentence. And so in this way, Fury is actually far inferior, in my opinion, to Zeal, because not only does Zeal, actually regular attack when you run out of mana, it also cannot be interrupted, and just in general seems to work better. Now, that's not to say that you have a choice, because when you're in werewolf form, obviously you can't use Zeal. You have to use Fury. But knowing the weaknesses of the ability will help you understand how you can overcome them. Like, for instance, first off, it's nice to have a secondary ability. Feral Rage is a one-point wonder if you have lots of plus to skills, but unfortunately, my solo self-found Druid did not have lots of plus to skills. In fact, he ended up beating Hellbale with 0 plus to skills, except for his +1 Grizzly helmet. And this leads the question of, do you go with Fury all by itself, or do you build a secondary ability? And I think, honestly, you have to build a secondary ability with Fury, because if you don't, you won't have anything to use should those situations arise that you are, unable to rebuild your mana pool for whatever reason. Now, of course, you can chug potions. Every single time you run out of mana, you could just chug potions. It gets kind of tedious, but it will get the engine started, so to speak. Reminds me of an old situation with a car where the alternator's dead, and the alternator, or sorry, not the alternator, the battery's dead, and the alternator works just fine. The alternator is actually what generates the electric current that charges the battery, right? Well, if you get the car started, you don't need the battery, because the car is, going to run off the alternator. But as soon as you turn the car off, there's no battery to restart the car, because obviously there's just the silliness of, no electrical current to actually jump start the engine. As long as you're going with Fury, you're fine, because you can generate the mana that you need. But the moment that the engine shuts off, the moment that you hit 0 mana, that's when things become an issue, and you've got to jump start the car again. As far as damage output goes, though, is in the werewolf tree, Fury does seem to be the highest physical damage ability. Leveling it up past level, like 5 or something like that, 4. Leveling it up past level 4 does not add any additional hits. It gets stuck at 5, obviously. And it increases, I think it's about 7% damage, or sorry, 7% attack rating and a decent amount of damage per level. So leveling it up is going to give you off-weapon ED, which is specifically for physical damage. So if you are using Fury for a non-physical damage attack, like for instance, I don't know, maybe you're making some sort of crazy like Voice of Reason Wolf or something, which is mainly elemental damage. You don't need to level up Fury past level 4 because past level 4, the only thing you're going to be getting at that point is attack rating. For an elemental damage character that is not specifically focusing on the physical damage aspect of things, it's not necessarily required to put, dump points into it. However, if you are a physical damage character, I would recommend dumping as many points in as you can because the attack rating and the damage are very nice. As you can see, mine is 423% at level 20, and it does go up a lot higher than that. So, like, when you get it to level 30, it's 593, and at level 40, it's 763%. So if you've got a decent amount of plus to skills in shapeshifting, like you're wearing the new Metamorphosis helmet, if you've got decent, like shapeshifting skillers, things like that, you can actually get a pretty decent amount of damage out of Fury's damage bonus off weapon ED. And if you could manage to get it to level 50, it's 933% off weapon ED. Now, the attack rating percentage is important to talk about here because attack rating percentage is basically garbage. I say it this way because I want it to be shocking to those of you who think that it's good. Attack rating percentage generally is meaningless and doesn't do anything unless you have the hard points to enhance it. If I told you I was going to pick a homeless person and enhance their money by 7,000%, it sounds like an awful lot, but if he's got a quarter in his pocket, 7,000% of a quarter isn't really a whole lot of money. And that's really what it comes down to, is that you can have these insane, crazy attack rating percentage increases. Like right now, I have 240% from Fury. I have 335% from my werewolf. So that's what, 500, 4, 5, 6, 7. So 575. My quick math is terrible, so feel free to make fun of me. So 575%. And then I also have a weapon on right now, which gives me a 198% bonus. So that's what, 5, 6, 7. So 700 some odd percent increased attack rating, which sounds absolutely amazing, but overall it's basically nothing. And you see I have 14,552 attack rating, so how do I get that attack rating to go along with Fury when the attack rating percentage isn't really all that great? Well, the important thing about attack rating percentage is that if I have a lot of percentage, if somebody tells me they're going to give me 7,000% of the money that I own, wouldn't it be a bright idea before I meet this guy to go and, like fill up my bank account as much as I could so that when he applies that 7,000%, it's actually multiplying something? And so when you put on items like the Hasaris Iron Heel Chain Boot combo here, you get 860 attack rating based on character level. 860 attack rating plus the massive amount of attack rating percentage that I have actually adds up to a lot. And if I take these off, you will notice that my attack rating goes way down. I only have 7,045 attack rating right now without these boots. And if I take these boots and put them on, I go up to 14k. I am getting literally 7,000 attack rating just from this two-piece combo. There are other items in my inventory that give attack rating as well. This little 19 attack rating charm, which doesn't really seem like a whole lot, as you can see, I'm going from 14,387 to 14,552 just for a measly 19 base attack rating. I also have a 15 base attack rating here, doing pretty much the same thing, and a 40 base attack rating, all of which are helping me bring my attack rating up. If I drop these attack rating charms on the ground, and I drop my boots on the ground, you'll notice that I'm down to 6,399, which is actually pretty terrible attack rating wise. Melee characters usually want to be around 9,000 plus in hell difficulty, because you will miss more often than not. And if you don't have about at least 9,000 attack rating, things can just go horribly wrong. And as you can see, even with my charms, even with the fine grand charm and the fine small charm and the fine large charm, I'm still only around 7,000. So the boots are actually giving me literally 7,000 attack rating, which is going to help out the Fury more than pretty much anything. Now, of course, there's other ways to make sure that you're hitting physically. You don't necessarily need attack rating to pull this off. You can also use things like an Eth rune in a weapon is very, very powerful. As you can see here, my Bone Snap War Club has an Eth rune, which gives negative 25% target's defense. Negative target's defense actually does work on bosses, and it is extremely powerful. It works at half on bosses, though, unfortunately. Now, this will not show up on the panel, which is kind of bad, but it does show up when you're actually attacking the monster. You're going to notice a difference when you have that negative defense, because let's say the monster has like 10k defense normally, and you're reducing his defense by 25%. Well, 25% minus, or 10k minus 25% is 7,500. You've reduced his defensive capability drastically, which means that your attack rating doesn't necessarily have to be, that high to hit him. For instance, as I was talking about earlier, like with my 7,045 is not enough. However, if you're running a little bit of negative targets defense, like say negative 25% or negative 50% targets defense, 7,000 attack rating actually is enough. It's more than enough actually at that point, because you're reducing the monster's defense pretty drastically to the point where you don't need as much attack rating to accomplish the same goal. So to recap, I don't want to make this video 20 or 30 minutes long. Fury has some significant weaknesses. One is that it can be interrupted. Number two is that it cannot be used. You cannot use the ability. You cannot actually click with it to do a regular attack after it has run out of mana. Instead, it just simply says out of mana, which is unfortunately a bad thing. So do know that when you are using Fury, you want to have at least some other ability. I would recommend Feral Rage on the other click or on a hotkey, so that you can use to restart the engine. And that is important. The other main weakness of Fury is that it just absolutely sucks in large groups. The larger the group, the worse it's going to be, because you're going to hit more and more targets. Now, one thing that you can do to compensate for the fact that it is a very terrible ability in terms of like big group play is you can go with a one range weapon. So a lot of people don't know this about Fury or about melee attacks in general, but you can control how many targets you're hitting by controlling the range of the weapon. And I'd like to really quickly here pull up Ariat Plateau, or Ariat Summit, Ariat Plateau. And we're going to take a look at the weapons real quick, and I want to show you the difference in the range modifiers between these weapons, and why certain weapons are just generally better for Zeal and Fury, simply because the shorter range weapons will help you avoid attacking everything nearby. So let's just do the pole arms, which I think is the easiest one to go over here. And you'll notice that there is this modifier right here called Range Adder. And the Range Adder is going to add a specific amount of range to the weapon. So, for instance, you can see the Ogre Axe is a 2. The Colossus Fulge is a 2. But look what the Thresher is. The Thresher is a 1. So the Thresher tends to be a better choice for a Fury Druid. And that's why I think, honestly, the Reaper's Toll, which is a Thresher, is such a good weapon, is because it allows you to focus your damage much better. But look at some of the other weapons, like the Great Poleaxe, which is a 4, and the Giant Thresher, which is a 4. Now, this is, of course, the Range Adder, so all weapons have a base range of 1, which is basically like a melee fist. Like if you were to go out and punch something, that's essentially a 0 range weapon. And so the Thresher is a +1 range adder, which means, I guess, technically it's 2. The Great Poleaxe is technically 5, and so is the Giant Thresher. So if you are a Fury Druid and you're trying to, like, dish out as much damage as possible within large groups, you might want to avoid the Great Poleaxe and the Giant Thresher simply because the range is so large that you'll be able to hit literally everything that's surrounding you. Whereas with the range 1 weapons, it tends to be a little bit easier to get in there and actually, hit that single target that you would like to hit. As you can see here, the Phase Blade is a range 1, which means it's technically 2, so range adder plus 1, so it's 2. These swords right here, the Falcata, the Atigan, the Elegant Blade, the Hydra Edge, these are all 0 range adders, which means they're base. They're basically base distance, so they're basically the same as punching a target. Same thing with the Conquest Sword. And these can get you some different effects. See, the CB and the CS are both range adder 2s. In fact, all the swords are range adder 2s. I believe one of the best axes for the Druid is the Decapitator. As you can see, it's a range adder 2. Honestly, that makes me think that the Thresher might actually be the best choice, just simply because it's the range adder 1. A lot of this comes to play when you're building your Druid, and you got to think about like how you want to play it. And if you actually play a Druid through from beginning to end, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about when it comes to Fury and how the ability works, and how to get the best out of the ability. Now, when are you going to be surrounded? Well, you get surrounded all the time. I mean, think about Uber Tristram when you're fighting, like Uber Diablo, Uber Baal, or Uber Mephisto. How the hell are you going to only hit Uber Diablo, Uber Baal, or Uber Mephisto when you're surrounded by his minions or her minions, or whatever the hell pronouns they want to use? Diablo, Baal, and Mephisto are going to be spawning minions constantly, and you're going to be using Fury, which is your main damage ability, and you have to find a way around that. Feral Rage is a very good option, but it is not as high of a damage as Fury, in my opinion. However, in a situation where you are surrounded by monsters, trust me, Feral Rage is going to be better damage output for one monster than Fury ever will be, because Fury is going to be hitting everything, and Feral Rage will just be hitting the monster that you want, which has a very cool use case scenario for maybe Feral Rage being one of the more main abilities that you might use on your Druid. Of course, I already have that video up. Anyway, I've talked too long on this already, and as always, I do appreciate you guys and gals watching my videos, and keep watching.